Welcome to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast, brought to you by the Wealthy Speaker School. This is the podcast dedicated to people who want to speak more as a way to build their income and grow their business. Hey, welcome everyone to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast. I'm your host, Jane Atkinson. And today, guess what? It's just me. We are going to be doing a really cool show about where to find the money in speaking. And, normally I would share a little bit about my guest and try to share with you what some of their credibility and background is. And I realized that many people have been listening to the show for a long time without really knowing that much about me. So I'm going to give you a few little bio bullet points, okay, just to kick it off here. Number one, 30 years in the business. I have been around this industry for over 3 decades. I'm probably going on closer to 35 years, but I'm just going to stop counting at 30 because it kind of makes me feel old. But the first half of my career was as an agent. I represented and sold speakers. My first speaker, Bets Burr, she was an amazing leadership expert, and she really allowed me to learn the trade and cut my teeth. That was 3 years with her. Then I got recruited out to Vancouver to work for an amazing magazine publisher named Peter Legg. That was a brilliant experience. And then I got recruited down to Dallas to work with an Olympic athlete named Vince Pacenti. Now, while I was with Vince, his wife actually owned a speakers bureau. And so not only did I get to do 6 years underneath the roof of a speakers bureau where we sat in on every meeting that went on, I also got to work 2 years. My final 2 years in Dallas were with the Bureau, representing really amazing speakers like Joe Calloway and best-selling authors, the authors of Funky Business and the Clue Train Manifesto, and Susan O'Malley, who was the president of the Washington Wizards. So we had some really, really cool people that we represented, and that was a fun time. I learned so much about the bureau business through that. I've also gone on, I moved back to Canada and started my own coaching company called Speaker Launcher. That was over 15 years ago now. And I've written 3 books for the industry. The Wealthy Speaker 2.0, most of you have probably read that one already. The Epic Keynote, which is about presentation skills. And my baby, is called the Wealthy Speaker Daily Success Planner and Journal. Love, love, love that product. And a part of this has allowed me to help thousands and thousands of speakers grow the business of their dreams, either through the books or through coaching or through some of the masterminds that I do. And now we actually have the Wealthy Speaker School, which lays out the foundation and how to be successful very, very quickly at not a huge price point. Now, one of my private coaching clients told me that somebody else told him that there was no money in speaking. And I thought about that for 1 minute, and I'm like, what? What do you mean there's no money in speaking? How is it that we have speakers out there, we have private coaching clients and mastermind clients that are out there getting paid $3,500, $7,500, $15,000, $30,000 per speech? There is money in speaking. Now, certainly every speaker has heard a client say, well, we don't pay our speakers, or we just use industry speakers. That is something that certainly happens. But when you figure out where the money is, you're able to go directly there. And that's the whole point of this podcast, is to really help you start to think. This is kind of like an idea churner. I want you to be starting to think about where you can go to get paid. So when people say we don't pay our speakers, you could take that as an opportunity to say, okay, well, what if I found a sponsor? Could we do it that way? And you could go to the association sponsors, people who might sponsor events that are ongoing throughout the year, or perhaps their annual convention sponsor. That's a possibility right there. You might say, okay, I don't accept that. Challenge accepted. I would like to become your next paid speaker. But when it comes to show me the money, where can you find it in speaking? And let's drill it down into kind of two major categories. And then we have a whole bunch of subcategories from there. Level A would be associations and corporate. Now, this podcast is going to be a note taker, but we are going to offer you a cheat sheet or a working document that will allow you to map out your market. So just know we're going to provide you with something that has all of the ideas on there. And honestly, I have such a long list of places to find business that I don't even know if I can fit them all on the cheat sheet, but we're going to try. So associations is where we always start when searching out speeches. Why? Because A, it's easier to find the information. The dates of their meetings are public record, and the research of the event is so much easier than corporate. Like, where would you even begin if you were to try to find a corporate event? You know, you could be walking through a hotel at any given day of the year and see, oh, there's Dell having a meeting in this room, but it's going to be probably a smaller event. It may not be a big national sales meeting or something like that. Unless you're speaking to a sales audience, it's difficult to know where to begin with a large corporation. If you speak on sales, you can go straight to the VP of sales and, when are you having your events? But let's say you speak on leadership. Where would you start in a corporation? Would you start with one of the senior vice presidents, or would you start with HR? I mean, it really takes some time to get to know who your ideal buyer is within corporate, which is why we tend to go to associations first. Now, some of you listening in may have sorted out who your best contact is within a corporation, but for people who don't have it down, maybe we just decide what industries and we veer over towards associations. So associations will publicly promote their events. They'll put them online, and they want to draw in new visitors to the event and new members. So finding out the details for their annual conference just takes a little bit of research. Now the question then becomes, do associations pay? While some associations may have their own industry specialists speak for free, many of them realize that in order to keep their members happy, they have to hire some professionals. And that's good news for us, because that's where we, of course, come in. The breakdown of an association meeting might include a daily general session, that's for the big audience, everybody, followed by deep dive learning sessions. They're called plenary or breakout sessions. They can be called other things as well, workshops, what have you. And I will refer you to another podcast episode that we did with Lori Pugh Markham of MPI, that's Meeting Professionals International. We'll put a link to the podcast in the show notes. I was actually surprised when Lori said that they did sometimes have a budget for some of their breakout sessions. So let's not rule it out that you will only get paid for the keynote role. You might actually get paid for the breakout role. And I've actually just seen some RFPs recently, that's requests for proposals, where they said they would pay some of the travel for the people coming in to do the workshops or the breakouts. And for audiences that are like chock full of your perfect audience, like MPI, like SHRM, the Society of Human Resource Managers, SGMP, Society of Government Meeting Professionals or Meeting Planners. I mean, those would be events that would be worthwhile for you to do for free just to get exposed to those audiences. Another one is ASAE, American Society of Association Executives, or the Canadian version of that, CSAE. Those are definitely possibilities. And if you got offered it, your goal, my friend, is to get yourself into the keynote role, if that's your thing, if you want to do keynotes. But if you can't get that, then I would go and do one of those events for free for the spinoff. Now, it's not unusual for a group like Lori's to put out RFPs. When filling these out, sometimes they'll ask what your fee is going to be. So again, let's not always assume that an RFP means no money. If you're going to make assumptions, let's assume that everybody has money and we just need to find it and dig deep enough into the well. And if you did decide to do one of those events for free, maybe there would be a sponsor come forward. You could ask the meeting planner, hey, is there a possibility that someone who's already sponsoring your convention would consider sponsoring my event and get a little bit of extra exposure? That might be a win-win. Excuse me, I had to cough there. I think my friend David Averin's approach is perfect. He says we fill out a lot of RFPs and we turn down a lot of freebie breakout sessions, but often we can convert their interest into me being their breakout speaker by offering to do both a keynote and a breakout. And I think that that's a really great idea. A lot of speakers at David's level would not fill out RFPs. And, they're out there hustling and getting the business. So I'm going to just throw that out there as an idea for you all. Now, when it comes to associations, as you move regionally, the fees can go up. So you may start with a freebie at a local association. Let's say you want to try on realtors for size and see if they're your market. You go to the local real estate association or maybe one or two in your area, and you might do those local monthly meetings for free. But then you might say, hey, could you introduce me to your state leaders? And then the state leaders might have a budget. If they don't have a budget, then you may need to go all the way up to the National Association in order to get paid. Here in Canada, it's going to be local, then provincial, then national. And of course, all of you could be considering about an international association as well. Now, why do we want to do those local real estate chapter meetings when we're just starting out? Well, number one, it's a great way for us to test whether or not real estate is going to be a good market for us. And number two, guess who's represented in that audience? Maybe there's 50 people or 100 people from 100 different real estate companies that could then become business for you. All right, let me go into a deeper example here. Maybe we do a local Greater Chattanooga Realtors Association. And then we move on up to Tennessee Realtors Association. And actually, something I found in my research, which we'll put in the show link, brought us out to the TennesseeRealtors.com/events. It actually showed all of the events in real estate, and I think that you'll find that there were some interesting things there. Now, at the national level, they aren't guaranteed to have budgets, but in my experience, that's where you'll find the most opportunity in the association world. As your fee goes up, you'll see yourself moving from local to state to national events. State events and provincial events can sometimes top out around $7,500. But of course, nothing is written in stone, and it's going to vary country to country. Here in Canada, we find the fees to be a little bit cheaper than in the United States. $10,000 in the United States is not an astronomical fee, whereas to get 10 in Canada is a little bit more difficult. I'm not saying it can't be done, though, because guess what? Some of my U.S. buddies have come up here to Canada, and they are getting their fees, whether they be $20,000 or $25,000 U.S., which of course is then 30% more for the corporation. So I know there are companies here in Canada that are spending the big bucks. Now, some of the larger state or regional events where they kind of gather up several states together or several provinces to join together. Here in Canada, we would have an Atlantic or maritime provinces gathering of people. They may have a little bit better budget, and that may end up surprising you that, you may think that they won't have any money, but they do. Now, let's move into corporate. Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 100 companies will pay to help solve problems. I'll bet that you wouldn't imagine that a large golf club manufacturing company would, for instance, have an on-site wellness coach and a whole host of work-life balance opportunities for its employees. But that is happening. I don't want to say the name of the company because they tend to try to keep it on the down low. They keep it pretty low key. But there is a company, let's say it's TaylorMade. It's not TaylorMade, but there's a company out there that is bringing in people to help its employees reach that whole work-life balance idea. And I think that is just amazing that there are companies out there spending money on that. Now, one of my clients, Deb Shaw, she was the former Senior Vice President, Chief Global Diversity and Engagement Officer at PepsiCo. So what does that tell you about how committed PepsiCo is to diversity and engagement? Hugely committed. And so they have executives that are in charge of entire divisions. And of course, she went all around the world with the message of diversity, inclusion, and engagement, etc. And these executives will pay to bring in outside help. So that's really good news for us. So let's break down the possibilities by industry so that corporate doesn't seem quite so broad. Now, I've got to tell you, the list is long, but I'm going to give it to you anyway here on this podcast. If you're taking notes, you'll do it voraciously, and if not, don't worry. We are going to have access for you to grab our cheat sheet in the show notes, okay? So here are just some industries that you may decide to investigate for speaking. Banking, credit unions, finance, real estate, insurance, mortgage brokers, wealth advisors, education. Let me break it down just a little bit for you here. Teachers, principals, teachers' aides, superintendents, education administrator. Now remember, all of these have associations for each of those groups. So there'd be a teachers association, there'd be a principals association, there'd be superintendents associations, and all of those are hiring speakers. So just remember that. Construction, hospitality, hotels, restaurants, tourism boards, destination management companies, direct selling, corporate conferences, downline events, nonprofit. Don't let that name fool you. There's volunteer events. There's fundraisers. Government. Now, please know that you can add a lot to these lists. I was just going off the top of my head, and I know there's a lot more, especially here in government. We've got frontline employees. We've got leaders. We've got even that meeting planners group that I mentioned earlier, Society of Government Meeting Planners. Speakers bureaus. Do you know about the International Association of Speakers Bureaus, IASB? They have a showcase every year for top tier speakers that might be a good fit for you depending on where you are in your business. Automotive, we've got dealerships, aftermarket, owners, manufacturing. The very first speaker that I ever represented, Betska, she went out on I don't know if they had to do a cross-country tour, but a big training contract for Chrysler. And so every company would have their own individual, plus there are associations for all of these groups, dealerships. There's aftermarket associations, there's owners associations, dealership, that type of thing. In technology, we have user group conferences, we have corporate conferences, healthcare. Now, this was a fun one, and I thought, I'm just going to look up healthcare jobs and see what all we get. So this one is a pretty long group. Frontline employees like nurses, nurse managers, personal support workers, administrators, social workers, kinesiologists, physiotherapists, occupational therapists, doctors, all specialties, family physicians, healthcare assistants, nurse scheduling and support workers, audiologists, radiologists, personal care, rehabilitation consultants. The list in healthcare goes on and on. And guess what? Every one of those has associations. The Nurses Association, the Social Workers Association, and on and on. Let me just finish up this list. It's crazy how long it is. Pharmaceutical, sales, leaders, C-suite, retail, sales, leaders, managers, owners, luxury travel. There's a whole association, there's a whole network called, a whole industry called luxury travel. Retail, franchise, transportation, agriculture, utilities. There's actually a lot of rural utilities associations. And then there's topic-specific conferences like safety, innovation conferences, health and wellness conferences, women's conferences, technology conferences, meetings industry, and travel conferences. I mean, guys, the list just goes on and on and on. So we're going to provide you with a cheat sheet that will allow you to kind of tick down and decide. And I would recommend that you choose no more than 3 industries to go after. You know, I have just talked to Mark LeBlanc, who has been in the speaking industry over 30 years. He started out doing a lot in financial services and real estate and has just morphed into having a big market with dentistry. So just know that over a 30-year career, you're going to see your industries evolve. And one of the things to keep in mind, I'm not saying that Mark only takes dental. What he may do, however, is put together a great marketing campaign to go out to dental. So all of his outbound attentions will be hyper-focused, but what comes to him may be things from other industries that he's focused on in the past. Do you see the difference there? Be very clear that we're talking about 3 max in terms of your outbound marketing. What comes to you may be any industry, and it may be at some point in your business you decide that you're going to only, go all in. I know that I think it was Ron Culberson, and I'm thinking there's maybe David Glickman also might have gone all in on healthcare at one point. But you heard me read the list of healthcare. When they went on all in on healthcare, that gave them a whole heck of a lot. I didn't even talk about all the things that are under healthcare when it comes to senior citizens care and aging homes and things like that. I mean, there was a whole host of things that weren't even on that list. So I think this is good news, everybody. There is a ton of money out in the speaking business, and I think you, wealthy speaker, should go out there and grab your piece of the pie. Now, I have to tell you something. The Wealthy Speakers School is going to be opening soon, and you should go to wealthyspeakerschool.com. We're going to say that again in the closing, but I really think that if you are in the mode of firing, which means that you're reaching out to markets like the ones that we've talked about today, and you're looking for some really strong strategy to apply to your outbound marketing efforts, I think you're going to want to check out the Wealthy Speakers School. Not only do we walk you through how to get ready and really get a promise statement that's going to help you grab the attention of your clients in a very crowded marketplace. We're going to help you get more focused and really put together a website that is going to sell them once they get there. But once your website is done and we're into the fire mode, We have so many, now they're short and sweet, but they're juicy lessons on how to actually go out and get the business. Let me just share with you a few of the fire modules. How do I get booked? Asking for the business. Telephone selling with Anthony Steers. Where do I find the clients with David Avrin? Planting seeds with focused hustle, building the business with speakers bureaus. That's just a few of them. And then we actually have a whole another advanced section that may be available to you as well. So, wealthy speakers, I hope you have found this not overwhelming. I hope, if anything, you've thought, yay, there's business out there for me. I'm going to go and grab my piece of the pie. Okay, don't let this overwhelm you, because you're going to narrow it down and you're going to get focused on 2 or 3 of this long list, and you're going to get out there with focused hustle and create the business and the life of your dreams. All right, that's all for now. We'll see you soon, wealthy speakers. Hey, thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed our show, you'll want to come and visit us at the Wealthy Speaker School, where we provide a proven roadmap for building your dream business. Go to wealthyspeakerschool.com. And for show notes for today's podcast, head on over to speakerlauncher.com and click on podcast. I'll see you soon, wealthy speakers.